Okay, I'm thrilled to be joined now by Michelle Liu. She's the founder and CEO of Novel Farms for a deep dive into one of the most important conversations in cultivated meat right now. That's how to drive down costs without compromising on quality, safety, or scalability. Michelle doesn't just talk about scaling, she challenges what that really means, from media cost breakdowns and avoiding unnecessary GMP complexity to rethinking downstream processing and exploring circular business models. Novel Farms is looking at the cultivated meat cost stack from first principles. So let's get into the nitty gritty, where the industry is over engineering, how to unlock new value from byproducts, and why demystifying the technical and economic barriers is essential if we want to reach price parity with conventional meat. Welcome, Michelle. I'm excited to dig into it all.
All right, thanks, Sapper. Thank you for having me, and happy to talk about what Novel Farms is doing to try and bring down costs of cultivated meat.
Brilliant. For listeners or readers who might not be familiar with Novel Farms, could you start by giving us a quick snapshot of what you're building and why cultivated meat needs a rethink when it comes to cost?
Yeah, so we're trying to bring down the costs of cultivated meat production by using simple food grade inputs and existing infrastructure. So we can take a CapEx light approach to manufacture at scale animal proteins, fats, and broths at the scale to meet the demands of large industries such as pet food industries and human CPG. And our technology specifically focuses on using high dimensional mass spectral data as input for machine learning platform to help basically use predictive modeling to control the input-output relationships of the animal cells and their surrounding environment, so the food they eat, basically.
Yeah.
And so that way we can do things like increase our biomass yields or tailor flavor profiles and so on and so forth. And we're just kind of taking I don't know, as simple of an approach we can to really m- m- manufacture the volumes that we need at the lowest cost possible.
Mhm. There's a lot of talk in this space about cost parity and scale, but not as much about the specific levers companies are pulling. You've been really open about the technical and economic barriers. Why is it important to demystify that conversation?
Oh, I mean, yeah, food is it's a commodity. So it's the lowest, it's like cheapest thing. And, we're going even lower on the commodities in the value chain, uh, almost to the raw input levels for some of these companies, are B2B customers, which would be manufacturers. And animals are really good at transforming essentially free food, right? Grass into thousands of pounds of meat. So we need to use science to essentially get the same types of biomass conversions um, with our raw ingredient inputs. So we can't continue to use ultra purified amino acids or carbon sources. I think we're going to have to go a little bit more crude and into food grade raw materials.
Mhm. I know in our emails before the interview, you mentioned that scaling isn't just about growing more cells, it's about doing that smarter. What's your philosophy when it comes to optimization without compromising on product quality or safety?
So we're really focusing on the key value proposition of animal cells, which I think are basically the flavors and nutritional profiles that animal cells can offer that other alternative proteins cannot. So, you have your three main things for food, which is cost, nutrition, and flavor. Cost and nutrition can easily be met by plant plant-based ingredients such as, soy, protein. They're very rich in proteins and super cheap to make. Flavor, on the other hand, is something that a lot of the alternative protein companies have not been able to deliver. So we're really, really focused on maintaining the flavor profiles um, during our manufacturing process. And that can actually change with what you feed the animal cells. So there you see the cost factor starting to creep in. Like if you need to use these expensive, lipids or something, fatty acids, to make sure that you have a proper, pork flavor profile, then that's going to be an issue. So finding out how to transform your media inputs into the correct flavor profiles, you will be able to generate higher margin, lower volume products. Essentially, concentrated flavors can sell for much more. So we're really focused on that aspect.
And that leads me on to media. We know that's a huge cost driver, but let's zoom in for a moment. What are the biggest culprits in the media recipe when it comes to those inflated costs? Is it the acids, the amino acids, the sugars, the growth factors?
Yeah, definitely amino acids. So we're seeing, as well as others, that amino acids, there's a nice cell paper that actually looked at where mammalian cells get the majority of their biomass. And it actually does come from amino acids as well as carbon sources. Growth factors are interesting. They are very expensive. However, you use so little of them and they're not actually consumed. So they're not a nutrient. They can actually stay in the media. And you actually don't want them to be around really during the harvest process, which, we can talk about downstream processing. You don't want to have residual growth factors on your biomass. But growth factor companies are also really stepping up. And I got a quote for FGF2 and IGF for they're aiming for $100 per gram. So that's very, very, very inexpensive. So growth factors are starting to not become a problem. However, the nutrients will be, because the cells actually consume them and you need them to make your biomass. So we're looking at for basic amino acid inputs that aren't as expensive.
Are you seeing any breakthroughs, Michelle, on the amino acid front, like microbial production or synbio innovations that could meaningfully bring those prices down?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of different types of hydrolysates starting to be offered. There's like the very typical ones. You have yeast, soy, uh, wheat, rice, hydrolysates, and then now you can find more. Um, I don't know, different grains. You can find barley, potato. There are ones coming out from algae sources, I think, are to become used as a nutrient supplement in media. So definitely more coming out from, I don't know, various companies making these.
Mhm. Now, I'm no expert, but I've heard that even basic sugars used as carbon sources can vary wildly in cost and purity. So, how do you go about sourcing or engineering carbon inputs that are both cost effective and consistent?
Oh, we haven't really explored our carbon sources yet, but we would definitely love to. Um, but that's something in the future. Right now, it's not too much of an issue for us. But yeah, maybe it might. But I can definitely see, um, beer, right, is made with things like molasses, malt, and these cruder carbon input sources. So I can definitely see that happening
Mm.
as well.
Are there any alternative feedstocks that you've been experimenting with, maybe from agro waste or side streams that could bring that cost down and maybe even improve the sustainability?
Yes, we have been looking using barley, essentially barley hydrolysates, and trying to extract peptones from them. Just a unique kind of byproduct that we hadn't seen yet. But we mostly are just tuning right now the specific amino acid ratios in our media, which is very specific for every cell line, to tailor that down and then match it to various peptones and hydrolysates that have the closest matching amino acid concentration.
We're going to switch subjects now, Michelle. There's a big difference between GMP for biologics and what's actually needed for food. So, where do you think the cultivated meat sector has perhaps over-engineered, and why do you think that's happened?
Yeah, so I think the first companies that were rushing to be the first to market used probably a little bit too complicated but safe manufacturing processes using basically biologics grade GMP practices. And these use a lot of single-use plastics and is engineered for being extremely aseptic because you don't want to, get contamination when you're producing medicines that people are injecting into their bodies. And I believe this was the safest way to get FDA approval because FDA already knew, these practices have been used by these biopharma companies for a long time, and we know they're safe. However, I think we can see that as this space has evolved, many of these companies are at least openly talking about using food grade processes that are not using things like single-use plastics. They're using, reusable steel bioreactors. And I think you can see in Mission Barnes's FDA submission that they did not do a biologics grade manufacturing process. And so we just need a little bit more patience. And, FDA, this is new for FDA too. And they need to make sure at every single step that, you're not introducing contamination. You have stop gaps engineered in to, prevent any kind of foodborne pathogens from forming. So yeah, we want to use, a process similar to beer brewing. Beer brewers also get contamination. And same with yogurt manufacturers, yet their processes are extremely clean. And they have years of experience that we don't. So we want to use a similar process to these industries that use very, very similar equipment. Probably it's pretty similar. It's all stainless steel conical fermenters.
Mhm. And how does the Novel Farms approach fit for purpose GMP? Is there a middle ground between farmer level standards and food grade safety that are still going to keep regulators happy?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So all of our, when the time comes to approach FDA, we will outline our process, and everything is in compliance with the Code of Federal Regulations. So you can actually read in the U.S. law what is required of food manufacturers, what are the safety standards. They also have those for biologics, which we will not be following the biologics safety standards. So everything we're doing will already be outlined in the law, and we just need to do the necessary demonstrations of all the safety. And FDA will help you with that. So we can work with them to see what they want us, ask them what would satisfy them and how to best engineer in safety controls.
Mhm. Are you finding the regulators are becoming more open to alternative GMP approaches for cell cultivated meat, or is that still a bit of an uphill battle?
It seems that way based on Mission Barnes's approval. The other two, at least the Good Meat approval was a little intense. Their process with the use of single-use plastics, but I think Mission Barnes, they even have a pretty novel bioreactor design. So it's not the typical suspension cell um, system. So I think they must be open to
Mhm.
exploring new manufacturing methods.
No, I'm not going to get you to reveal any secrets, but in terms of facility design and validation, what are some of the smarter shortcuts or innovations you've found to reduce compliance costs without sacrificing safety?
Yeah, so the best way really is that we have found investigating, how we're going to scale this is to first de-risk everything with a contract manufacturer. So there are already commercial kitchens and CDMOs that are, you know, basically compliant, and to work with them first. So partner and basically outsource in our first steps because, we're not going to build, we're not going to sink in, not that we have millions of dollars, but we can't build an enormous plant if we don't know that we're going to have customers. So it's we'd like to work with a CDMO or contract manufacturer first to produce our initial batches of product.
That certainly seems to be the trend for other companies as well. Now, downstream processing, it's often the unsexy part, if I can call it that, of cultivated meat, but it's a cost killer. So what are some of the typical pain points, and where does Novel Farms focus its energy there?
Yeah, so harvesting the animal cell biomass can be a challenge. You know, your media will have some things in it that you don't want to be found. You don't want to have residuals of that in your biomass. Additionally, the actual harvest process, you know, using like continuous centrifugation or something like that, you do always have a yield loss step. So even with the initial harvest, you're not actually going to be harvesting all of the cells. They also lyse and whatever. So and then you know, on top of that, if you use growth factors in your media, you're going to have to do washes. So at least, you know, maybe one or two washes, and then with every wash, you're going to lose more biomass. So what you want to, you know, what we're trying to do is we want to save everything. So we want to save the spent media, save any of the washes that we need to do, and then basically valorize that instead of throw it away.
We've heard a lot about using edible scaffolds to avoid separation altogether. Are innovations like that changing the game for DSP?
I think so. Probably, you know, initially we were a scaffold company, but we were unable to scale its use essentially. But yeah, things like edible microcarriers, you know, you can just settle. They'll settle at the bottom of your bioreactor, and then you can just decant off the spent media. And then really, I think, yeah, definitely microcarriers and edible scaffolds could help in
Mhm.
the separation process.
Do you think there's a scenario where downstream processing could actually become a value add rather than just a cost center, maybe in how you finish or texture the final product?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I haven't really thought of that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure.
That's all right. Well, so it's a great question. Perhaps we could answer in a later date once you've investigated. We're going to talk now about valorization and alternative revenue streams. Are there any byproducts in your process, maybe from the media or spent cells, that you think can actually become profitable products?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everything is good that the animal cells can make. So I think the two biggest waste products are going to be lactate, which is a, you know, it's an organic acid, and ammonium. And both, you know, ammonium is harvested from the waste of animals to become upcycled or repurposed into a nitrogen source. So, you know, cow poop is used as fertilizer for plants, and even chicken poop is it's called poultry litter. It's actually kind of gross. They might not do this in the UK, but in the US, poultry litter is upcycled actually into animal feed. So
Right.
it's can be a pure nitrogen source, and I think they sprinkle it on cow food or grass. Yeah, things like that. If we can figure out how to yeah, basically use our waste, right, as a valuable nitrogen and carbon, and I'm sure there's phosphorus in there too, source. I think that would be the best. And I've seen some papers already using spent media as a feedstock for other you know, organisms downstream.
Mhm. Now, some cultivated meat companies are exploring cosmetics or biomaterials, even supplements. Are there any adjacent markets that you're actively exploring as part of your business model?
Right now, no. We did do some customer discovery in other industries, and cosmeceuticals and nutraceuticals are definitely the most promising industries. But uh, for us, the technical pivot would have been a little bit too intense. So we've basically broadened our in addition to human food, we're also looking at pet food.
Mhm.
But we have not looked into other industries. Yeah.
Mhm. Are there any alternative revenue streams as bridge strategies helping to generate cash flow while the core meat product scales, or as permanent pillars of the business?
Yeah, I mean, we would be happy to just find any customers right now. And we are thinking uh about ways to valorize our every step of our process, including the waste. So yeah, if we can sell every part of our product, that would be amazing. But yeah, this is TBD. We're still working things out.
Mhm. We're going to wrap up soon, Michelle. If you had to choose one area where the industry is massively overcomplicating things, what would it be? And what's the simpler path forward for you?
I think probably the manufacturing process. It seems like everyone um wanted to build their own pilot plants and, build a biomanufacturing process on their own when there already exists many contract manufacturers that have decades of experience doing this.
Mhm.
And I think these CDMOs are now more open to working with or cultivated meat companies that are making food products and not medicine. So I think just dialing back the vertical integration may help. And I think finding partners with the appropriate subject matter expertise that might not be in your wheelhouse is the most prudent way and effective way to try and advance our industry.
Mhm. You've clearly thought a lot about cost from first principles. So, what advice would you give to other founders or scientists trying to bring down price points without compromising on their visions?
Um, I mean, I think the easiest way to understand your cost drivers is to do a techno-economic analysis as early on as you can. You may not have all of the pieces yet, but just putting down even the most, your basic benchtop process on paper and just theoretically scaling that can be extremely helpful. This is how we identified very early on that media was by far our biggest cost driver.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, yeah, those things you're going to have to constantly buy. You can always raise the capital to build a plant and pay it off over 25 years. And then, it's not too much of a cost, but you will always be paying for your raw ingredient inputs. And so, yeah, I would definitely recommend, as we have learned in actually three accelerators that we've done, that the first thing you should probably do if you have a technology that you're trying to bring to market is to do a techno-economic analysis and understand the underlying costs of your process.
So, what's next for Novel Farms, Michelle? Are there any exciting partnerships, breakthroughs, or milestones on the horizon that you can share?
Um, we're able to now, manufacture meaningful amounts just in our little laboratory of cultivated chicken ingredient products for pets, so for pet food. So we are looking for product testing partners, anyone who we're able to give out samples, and if anyone really wants to test this out in-house, we have some data suggesting that pets actually like cultivated chicken more than real chicken, which is interesting. So we're looking actively for partners and anyone who wants to test cultivated chicken. We would love to be able to do also a tasting by the end of the year because I think we can make enough now to hold a tasting for human food. So
Lots of exciting things to come then. Look, Michelle, thank you very much for your time. It's been fascinating speaking with you, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care.